Hi, I'm Adam Culp, and you're at Beachcast. Today, I'm going to share ways to advance your programming skills and how you can improve as a developer. So stick around, and we'll get right on that. Welcome back. If you want to grow as a developer and learn how to make better web applications, start now by subscribing to Beachcast and make sure to click the bell notification so you won't miss anything. And if you found this video helpful or if you have a question, please leave a comment down below. And please make sure to like the video by clicking the thumbs up button. Thank you. Some of the questions I'm asked most often by other people is, how can I advance as a developer? How can I learn how to be a better programmer? What do you think I should do to advance my skills and be able to get a job, a full-time job as a programmer? So I've got some ideas behind this. Now, these aren't rocket science. It's not earth-shattering discoveries, but rather these are things that I've found that helped me to improve my programming skills and help me do better as a web developer. So the first item is that I have to keep things interesting. I have a very tough time staying focused on things. I have a very difficult time keeping myself into whatever task I'm currently doing. So I find that keeping it interesting is very important. Now, I have a couple ways of doing that. Generally, in our day-to-day tasks, we tend to be doing things that are pretty routine, right? They're the same thing all the time. Maybe we're working for a certain company and the products that we're working on are the same products for, days, months, or even years. And it's very hard to stay interested and stay focused on that. So what I've found that helps me is to do some side projects. Maybe for money, maybe for not. Maybe I typically don't do side contracts because side contracts means that it's more full time. It's something that's a little bit more formal. So I tend to shy away from doing contracts only because as of late I've had a full time employer. Most NDAs with companies and most contracts that you have with your full-time employers state that you can't really do that. But you can do like side little projects, and maybe some of them are making money, but it's not contractual, right? It's just something where, hey, I'm going to perform some task for you or build some small little proof of concept for you. And in return, I'll make some sort of fee for that. Another thing I find that works really well is to cut down on distractions. So try to keep your like your Twitter feed, your Facebook, other social media, try not to keep those open. Open them, check your messages every once in a while, but then turn around and shut them back down again. So that way they're not pulling your attention away from what you're doing. Some of the biggest distractions are having extra things open. Now, since I use Linux as my primary operating system for my development environments, generally what I'll do is I have multiple workspaces and I can switch back and forth from one workspace to another. What I can do then is I can have my social media or things that drain my attention off on another workspace. So they're not right in my face, but yet they are there so that I can swap over really quick when I need to check something or want to check something. But yet they're not distracting from what I'm actually working on. And I find that that helps a great deal. Another thing that I find that helps me keep my current project interesting is by keeping track of my yak shaving. In technology, we have a term that is called yak shaving, and that is where rather than actually performing a given task or rather than doing a certain activity, we tend to do other side activities that distract us from that. Maybe if it's time for me to do some programming, maybe I'll go and read some blog posts or watch some videos that might be related, or I might be doing something like if I have to migrate an application from one place to another, maybe I spend way too much time doing DevOps to get everything up and working. And I don't really need to spend that much time on DevOps, but I do. And therefore, it's more of a distraction. And we call that yak shaving because you're spending all this time shaving the yak versus doing what you're actually supposed to be doing. So those are some of the things that I do to help keep things interesting for me. So I stay on task because it's very easy to get distracted from that. Another thing that I find really helpful for me to learn and grow as a developer is by creating documentation. Maybe, maybe I'm working on something. There are many open source projects out there that would welcome somebody to help them create documentation for whatever it is that they're doing. So I have yet to find any open source project that would, tell you, no, please don't help us document this. If you're doing some project, if you're working with some open source library, and you find that you struggle to get past something, and then once you work your way through it and you're like, if the documentation had told me this one little thing, it would have been so much easier. Why not add that to the documentation? Issue a pull request. It does two different things. One is it keeps you from losing interest in what you're doing because you're working in something that you are already going to help, already doing, and it helps the next people that come along so that they'll have that extra little bit of documentation so that they don't run into the same problems that you did. And of course, it helps you by contributing to open source. That's brand building, it's personal brand building. So that way you can point to a given repo and say, I contributed to this open source project and I did it through documentation or through code, whatever the case might be. Another thing that I find that really helps me with my skills as a developer is by reading the documentation to begin with. Many times we'll go out and we'll find some library or something that does what we need it to do, and then we spend a lot of wasted time trying to figure out how to utilize it. Where if we had looked at the documentation even briefly, we might have been able to create shortcuts to get things done versus having to slog our way through it. Now, I'll be the first to admit when I'm working with something, I find it very challenging. I find it somewhat rewarding to hack on something until I figure it out. But on your day-to-day job or in projects, I've come to find out that it's a lot more beneficial if you just read the documentation really quickly. There are still things that you'll have to hack on. There are still things that you'll have to figure out. But that will become a little bit less, and you'll find that your programming becomes a lot more enjoyable because you spend less time trying to troubleshoot an issue that really wasn't an issue to begin with. You were just using it incorrectly. One of the things that I find really helps me is by watching additional videos, reading blog posts, doing things like that. Maybe even watching episodes of Beachcast. Now, not for me because I'm creating the episodes of Beachcast, but for you. Oftentimes, I find that although I tend to learn more by actually doing, so by solving problems and doing the code, I find that I learn a lot more that way. One thing I do find is that watching videos tends to kind of break the ice for me. How I think Beachcasts help people most of all is that it gives them something to watch in their spare time, or maybe they follow along in the code, and they are able to see how something might be done. So that way, when it comes time for them to actually try to program these solutions or try to use these libraries or things along that line, then hopefully they think back to that Beachcast episode and they're like, I remember Adam did this on Beachcast. And then it's not so much of a shock. Or maybe you have some way to overcome a hurdle that you might have run into. So again, videos are so great for that because it allows you in your spare time. Oftentimes what I'm doing is I'll be sitting in a doctor's office or in a waiting line or something like that, and I'll watch a video on something that I know I'm going to be trying to tackle eventually. And then when it comes time, I'm reading the documentation and actually trying to use the library or perform some task. I always think back to the video as well, and it just gives me another point of reference and makes things go a little bit easier as I go along. So videos can really be helpful for that. There's a lot of different resources for that. Free Code Camp has a lot of good videos. There's also Treehouse, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, that used to be lynda.com. And those cost a little bit of money, but they are still good resources and they're not really expensive to be able to pick up on some of these technologies. Maybe you want to look at something like Code Academy. And again, Beachcast, you can watch more Beachcast episodes as I'm recording them to help you learn new things. And let's not forget community involvement. So in being involved in a community, whether that's the PHP community, the Laravel community, or any other community out there, maybe the JavaScript community, and there's various communities around that. There's a WordPress community, a Drupal, a Joomla, a lot of different communities out there. I encourage you to contribute to those, be a part of them. If you have a local user group in whatever technology or whatever framework you're interested in, go out and join them and spend time with other people who are also trying to learn these tools and who are also willing to share and help each other how to better use these things. So please go out, reach out to your local community. I have found that over the years, my time spent in the community was returned to me tenfold. Not only did it allow me to meet new people, it also kind of introduced me to new technologies that I might never have heard about otherwise. But it also gave me relationships that then I was able to draw from. And I knew that if I had a question about something, and I knew somebody from the community, hey, so and so was working with this, or so and so might know a little bit about this. And then I can reach out to them directly because I have that relationship and I can say, hey, can you help me with this? Or what resource would you recommend for me to learn this a little bit better? So community is really, really important. Again, there are conferences, there are user groups. Right now we have the CFP going on for Sunshine PHP, which happens every February in Miami. So if you're interested in PHP, that's a good conference to attend. If you're from South Florida, please come see us at the South Florida PHP user group. We meet every single month. And the topics are very various. I mean, we have a lot of different things we talk about. So come out and join us, or any local user groups in your area. Please go out, find them, and communicate and participate, and be a positive actor for change. Tell others about your local communities and help them grow. One of the biggest things that I found that really helped me on a day-to-day, in my day-to-day jobs, has been to ignore the fads. Now, pay attention to what's happening. Pay attention to what people are talking about and what they are doing and the technologies that they're using. But be a little bit trepidatious. And what that means is just don't jump in, right? Don't jump onto the fads and be all in. Like, let me go do Docker. Let me go do, whatever the technology might be. And I'm not saying that Docker is bad. I'm just saying that, just be cautious about what you jump into. I see developers every single day who jump into a technology and then everything has to be 100% that technology. And that's not always good either. It's good to test out new technologies. It's good to play with these new things, but don't get drawn into the point where every nail can only be hit by a hammer. Right. And, make sure that you're looking at things a little bit more openly and enjoy these new technologies. Have fun with them. But again, don't leap all in for fads, because what you'll find is that eventually one day you'll look back and you'll say, oh, wow, I was hitting every one of those nails with a hammer and it turned out some of them were screws. I should have used a screwdriver, right? So just be aware of that. Don't jump all on board. Also, by the same token, don't be drawn into these posts that we see out there about X technology is dead and this technology is better than that technology. These are just things that grab your attention and they aren't positive in any way. They're just trying to it's clickbait to draw you into these articles and draw you into these things. Or somebody has recently jumped onto a fad and they're like, oh yeah, JavaScript, everything. JavaScript is the world. And while JavaScript is awesome, and while it can be used for many things, it's not a hammer that should be used for every nail or screw. It's something to be tempered and used where it applies, but there's nothing wrong with using other technologies where they best apply too. So don't be drawn in by some of those things. The technologies typically are not dying just because these posts say they are. Typically they're holding well. This person just is being evangelistic about some fad that they got drawn into. So don't fall too much for those. I mean, read them certainly so you know what might be coming down the line, but look at it from an educational standpoint versus an emotional standpoint, and use new technologies in a tempered way. Don't jump all in and become over evangelistic about one thing over another. There's a lot of fun technologies out there, a lot of great things to do as a developer. Above all, the number one thing, and I have a few more things that I'm going to share, but the number one thing that I've found that has made me a better developer is to program more. Do more programming, do more sample applications, do more programming on a day-to-day basis. Reading about programming, watching videos about programming, reading blog posts, all these things are awesome. It is the debugging and the troubleshooting and all this that will lead to you becoming a better programmer and a better developer. So please write more code, make more mistakes, do more things, go back and refactor some of the code that you've created in the past. These are the things that will make you a better developer. Now, by that same token, maybe you don't have enough tasks to keep you busy. One way around that is something like Stack Overflow. There are problems posted every single day on Stack Overflow and some other places too. But go out to Stack Overflow occasionally. If you're a little bit bored and you don't know what to do, don't get sucked into the latest drama on Twitter. Instead, go out to Stack Overflow and see what problems in your given technology of preference is, see what questions people are asking, see what problems they're posing out there, and hack on them a little bit. If you know how to solve it, post the solution so other people can benefit from it. Answer their questions on Stack Overflow and help out people. Again, this goes back to community in a way, but at the same time, it also gives you something to do as a programmer. So that way, if you're doing more hands-on things, if you're troubleshooting more, if you're adding more code to these things, then you are still learning. Oftentimes, a lot of people answering the questions on Stack Overflow, they might not know the answer right offhand. So they do a quick little proof of concept, or they hack something together, and then they post a solution out there to help others. Now, granted, there are some people who know a lot and they answer the questions really quickly, and that's okay. But for most of us that don't know those answers off the back of our hand, we do tend to go ahead and hack something together really quickly and help out those in need. Another way to do this sort of thing is daily coding challenges. There are multiple sites out there, multiple services that have a daily coding challenge, and you can sign up for them. They have like a little newsletter area that you can sign up. On a daily basis, they will send you some programming challenge that you can hack on. There's also a daily coding problem. You can do a search for daily coding problem and you'll find their site. Interview Cake does some of these things where they send problems to solve. It's more geared toward people who are getting ready to go into a programming interview so that they can get practice answering questions, but it works well for programming challenges. And there's also Daily Interview Pro, which does kind of the same thing. They have questions that are geared toward helping people solve coding problems during interviews. But again, the daily emails that they send out with these coding problems is awesome to keep you fresh, to keep you programming. And again, this goes back to the point a couple points ago, which is just keep programming, keep developing by writing more solutions, by touching the code more, troubleshooting, debugging, maybe writing tests. You can do all these things to help you, and these daily coding challenges help a great deal with that. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like the video down below, and also remember to subscribe so you can see more videos like this in the future. Hopefully they'll help you become a better developer. Thank you.